Hey guys, this is Faster U4 brought to you by Fitland, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. If you're a cyclist, you want to go faster? Then let's giddy up. Hey guys, welcome to Fast U4 by Fitland, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa and Capital Cycles. So, bike racing yesterday at the Wellington Masters Cycling Club Road Race Championships. It's a big boy. Let me tell you all about it because I won. I'll tell you some thoughts I had about the the race as a whole, and I think my thoughts about bike racing that I think will be useful. And sorry if the sound's a bit different to normal. I'm trying this headset that's got a different microphone in it than the usual crappy Apple earbuds I normally use. So hopefully this could even be better sound than normal. Hope it is. I'll tell you about those thoughts, and I'll tell you about an interesting event that's coming up on Friday, which is a Criterium being held in a parking building, which looks like good fun. So this should be hopefully a shorter episode than my normal ramblings. All right, let's talk about yesterday. Sunday the 25th of March 2018, we had the Wellington Masters Cycling Club Road Race Champs 2018. So this is a much the same course as what is planned for the 2018 age group national champs. If this, although I'm not really sure which way is some of the top loop especially is going to be run, whether it's going to be steep side or not steep side over Millers. It doesn't matter. You can summarize this course as lumpy, flattish, lumpy-ish, especially the road from Martinborough to Longbush, Gladstone, and not a pure climber's course at all. Likely to end up in the sprint, I think, for a lot of races. However, it didn't yesterday. I broke away. I'll show you what I did. So total moving time of 2:55:48 or so. So a long day in the saddle for 112.4 kilometres, climbing of 874 metres, all of those in little chunks, nothing big. Work of 2,792 kilojoules. So just over 10 McDonald's hamburgers worth of energy consumed. It's pretty good for 3 hours work. You know, on a minute per calorie basis, you know, that's like having a bite of hamburger, or oxidizing a bite of hamburger's worth of calories, you know, once every 5 minutes or something, probably. I think that's pretty cool. Imagine it all burning away down there. Okay, so we had an average speed of 38.4 kilometers an hour. Average power of 265 watts, heart rate 148, which is getting high for me. There's a good reason for that, which is my form is coming down. Incidentally, I did do a lactate test on myself the day before this race, which is my little tradition, my little pre-day warm-up ride that I do, and the numbers were not good, which is interesting to see because the natural ebb and flow of your form is something you have to get used to as a cyclist, and it's not bad or good. It is worth measuring though, so you know when your form is going to be. It's something I enjoy doing. And look at that, maximum heart rate 170. So again, I've mentioned before that when my heart rate manages to climb up to the mid 170s, that's usually a sign that my form's good, and obviously it didn't. So, you know, it's just interesting to see that happening towards the tail end of the season. Cadence is 94. It's around the sweep spot front. So an EP of 303 watts. So it's like a normalized power, like an actual power, if you like, for the race, which is not big, not a strong level. So what happened? Well, Yeah, the thing to remember about this and coming into it, my thoughts were that, two thoughts. This is a long race for an amateur race, over 100 kilometers. And anytime it happens, anytime things start to go over about 80 Ks, it's interesting to see the guys who don't have the endurance suffer. And when I talk about endurance, it's not necessarily like, I don't mean endurance necessarily like in the sense of aerobic endurance, which is the way a lot of people think of it. Sometimes people have very good, efficient aerobic motors, but they don't have, in masters racing, the muscle mass. And so they're tearing a lot of fiber to make accelerations, and eventually they get so sore and their muscles get so weak that they don't have it in them, and after that 80K phase. And some of that, I think, is just a symptom of getting older, losing muscle mass, your hormones changing. And you can fix that by getting training adaptations by going to the gym and lifting weights. And it's not new to anyone that in masters sport, lifting weights is useful. But I really see it all the time. I've seen it be useful for me, and I see it be useful for the riders I coach who put on a bit more muscle mass, and it makes a big difference. It's not just your aerobic engine people. In fact, masters athletes, if they've been around for a while, often have very good heart and lung capacity, mitochondrial density, all the things that help you be an endurance athlete, and can sometimes report that really their lungs were fine, but they ran out of legs. It's muscle mass, people, so work on that. All right, so a lot of the first half of this was really just plain lapping out. In fact, it was quite cool because for a lot of the race, we held up a very high average speed. I mean, if I look in here, probably averaging, well north of 40 kilometers an hour for a lot of the first half of the race, and that's just because everyone was lapping out pretty consistently. So to come back to my thoughts about the race, I was saying it's long. So guys are going to start to run out of legs in the second half, which is where attacks can happen and be made to sort of stick. Second thought is it might have to be multiple attempts at making attacks, because then there's nothing hugely significant about obstacles on the course. So you can kind of see, if you're looking at the screen, how I what I did about that. I went away about the halfway mark, made an initial attempt at a sort of semi-breakaway on a small rise, went away with Jonathan Leonard for just over 3 minutes, averaging 362 watts, so a medium strength attack, but the bunch pulled us back pretty quickly. We rode again as a bunch for about another 9 minutes before we came back by the what is the Parkvale Mushroom Factory. There's a small rise there, and it's sort of a traditional favourite area for people to launch attacks. A little descent immediately after it, and my tactic on courses like this is always just to keep putting in jabs and keep making efforts, especially later in the race, and then see what the reaction is from the group. Now, I did put down not even really a very strong attack, just accelerated. I wasn't really meaning to attack at all. In fact, my goal on this rise was just to string out the bunch. I thought what would happen would be that the weaker 25%, 30% of the bunch would go back, and that I'd be left to ride the next half of the race with maybe a selection of 10 guys, 5 to 10 guys, and then I'm probably on the main climb, Millers, that I could leave all but maybe one of them behind, maybe the strongest. As it turned out, I accelerated and just kept on a medium strength attack to just under 3 minutes at 449 watts there. And when I look back, I didn't expect it. I was kind of pointing out objects on the side of the road, and when I look back, I noticed that no one was on my wheel. And then there's this sort of bit which is, are they not on my wheel but they're still chasing hard, or are they not on my wheel and they're blowing and going backwards fast? And the situation was the latter. So then you've got this choice, which is, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I'm kind of a fan in that sort of point in time of really kind of going fairly hard and just keep extending that out. And you'll find out over the next few minutes of you going pretty hard whether this is a worthless attack or not. Obviously, it was a bit of a gamble because it's still at least a third of the race to go, which is close to 50 Ks. It's a long way to go. Maybe 40 Ks. It's a long way to go by yourself anyway. And but the point is that the bunch wasn't really chasing, and my understanding of the report is that they didn't really work very strongly together after that. So again, if you're looking at the screen, you can see pretty clearly here 1 hour and 47 minutes, my attack, and then solo time trial. The heart rate curve is very flat, the power curve is very flat, and that's just because I was away by myself. Pretty simple. Interestingly, I mean, if you want to know what power I was doing, here we go. For the next flattish, lumpy-ish, next 4-5 minutes, averaging 367 watts. So right about the point where I want to be, right about threshold power on the flat. Nice aero position. And there was some lumps. Tried to not go too hard on those. I could see I distanced the bunch. Coming up towards the steep side of Millers, putting about 15 minutes, averaging 333 watts, just averaging into a bit of a headwind through 34.8 K an hour. So that's what I was doing there. Coming up Millers again, I didn't want to go too crazy, just putting out for about 1.5 minutes, about 389 watts. So you can see I'm staying below VO2 max there. VO2 max for me being about 420 watts or so. That's the maximum pace you can sustain for about 3 to 4 minutes. It's a very heavy zone to be in, and I want to be somewhere between, for these little efforts like this, somewhere between threshold and VO2 power. So 389 is a good space to be. Little recovery coming down the backside of that hill, and then I had a total of about 25 minutes riding on my own on pretty flat roads, and you can see, my heart rate starting to decline over that time. The curve is definitely going downwards. That's a sign that I was running out of energy, running out of legs. And in fact, the last, for about 18 minutes here, coming to the final, only averaging 272 watts. That was kind of, I kind of knew that there was going to be a bit of a northerly on that part of the course. So even though I'm only averaging 72 watts, look at that, 41.4 K an hour average speed because of that tailwind. So if you are going to feel like maybe you're going to go on a late attack and this scenario is going to happen where you're away by yourself for a long time, you want to plan it so that you do have the wind with you, so that the speed differential for the power loss isn't too high. And if this was flipped around and I had a headwind in that section, it's highly likely I wouldn't have stayed away at all with those sorts of power levels. So if anything, if it's like in a sprint or anything that you go, the better the wind is for you, the more at your back it is, the longer you can go. I just came up in one solo by a couple of minutes. So let's have a look at the actual results. Thanks to the race manager John Goodman, timekeeper and marshals Craig Chambers, Malcolm Collins, Dave McGee, Chris Muir, Robert Paul and Matt Webber and Brian Graham. We had me coming in at a time of 2:55.50. Paul Delahunty taking out the sprint for second, 2:57.35. So just under 2 minutes there. I took it by Hope Buke, who had ridden the Gentle Annie up north the day earlier, coming back riding this race as well, just getting pipped for second in the sprint, ahead of Kieran Allwood. And Lee Campbell was up there as well. Lee broke his collarbone, has a giant scar, helping me out in the that was his reward for helping me out in the North Island series. last year, and he is coming back like a freight train, which is good. Putting it in the gutter a few times, turning up the watts, turning on the hurt. A good man to have on your side. Thank you, Lee. All right, so coming in after that, Richard Van Lent riding strongly. But look at the distance here, actually. I mean, the next bunch back. Best part of 10 minutes back, about 8 minutes back. It's pretty strong. Bunch there, and a few stragglers after that. In the women's 65 Ks, we had Larry Broadbridge winning from Elizabeth Tomlinson and Deborah Wright. Larry is a savage, 2:08.38. Must have gone away by herself sometime late in the ride. Nice person and a good rider by all accounts. So congratulations, Larry. In the Super Vets 65 plus, we had 48 Ks. We had Peter Lee winning from Alan Stoll and Laurie Farrington. Look at this ride from Ross Jackson though, 1:31, only 1 minute after that. Coming in 5th place, but doing really, really well. One of my riders, congrats Ross. And the non-champs race, Winnie Lewin from Red Robinson. So good times. Thank you to the club for putting on another good race. So my thoughts about the race, apart from what I've already said, are that. So I was riding along, and I'm often sort of interested to see what people are doing, and I want to introduce you guys to this notion of having a plan. And I'll keep it simple. This applies to training and it applies to racing, and I think it's this. Well, actually, it probably applies to a lot of things in life, but be able to ask yourself the question on a regular basis throughout your training ride or throughout your race. Be able to ask yourself the question. The question is, why am I doing what I'm doing? So imagine someone coming up to you in the middle of the race and riding up next to you, pedaling along with, say you're up putting a big effort in on the front, you've been sitting on the front for 2 minutes, and that person turning to you and saying, Steve, why are you doing what you're doing? Now, there could be a very good reason for you doing that. It could be that you're working for a teammate, it could be that you're trying to break up the bench. It could be 10,000 things. Doesn't matter particularly what you're doing, as long as you have a purpose for doing that. Now, I know a lot of this sounds kind of pretty obvious, but I see this all the time, and probably in my own riding in the past. Guys, I'm pretty sure that if I rode up to them and said, in a way that they were receptive to, why are you doing what you're doing, they wouldn't really know. They're just racing their bike. And this kind of stretches out to the tactics or strategies sometimes people employ as a whole, which is they say to me something that I never want to hear any of my riders say again. And the thing they say is, oh, we'll see what happens. Well, no, don't see what happens. Don't ever see what happens. I want you to know what's going to happen as well as you can, based on the tactics that you choose to employ. Now, that doesn't mean those tactics are always going to go right. It doesn't mean they're always going to go as well as you hope or anything else. But let's make so we determine as much as you can, whatever happens in the race is because of you. Now, if because of you, you burn out and you can't stay with the bunch and you make an effort, well, that's fine. If because of you, you attack at a spot which is good for you and it suits your riding style and it suits your planning, and then that's successful, that's good. But if you come back from a race and you say, well, you just failed to plan your nutrition properly, or you failed to be positioned right in the bunch and then it split and you got caught, or any of these things, you just saw what happened. Well, I don't want to see that. And that part of bike racing is just nudging the odds in your favor as much as you can by making a plan. So here it is, guys. This week's tip is just know why you're doing what you're doing. Doesn't Doesn't mean it's always going to work. Doesn't mean that you have some plan and then that's your special plan and that's going to get you a win or anything. It's nothing like that. It's just why are you doing what you're doing, and that will hopefully stop you making or reduce the amount of obvious errors you make in your writing if it's at the wrong time, being at the kind of the main part of that. If you're making effort, something strong is happening and it's you, and I write up to you and I say, why are you doing what you're doing, in a metaphorical sense? You say, well, actually, this, and this is part of the plan. That's what you need to be thinking about. Tip number 2 for the week, I think, is comes to you from Kieran Allwood, who I noticed was riding out of the bunch for a while yesterday. I didn't see him for a while, didn't really think much of it, and he came up right next to me and said, well, that's a mistake I don't want to make again. He said, this is one for your podcast. And Kieran's tip for the week is, don't wee into a headwind. Now, I don't mean like when you're standing there. Women probably don't understand this problem in quite the same visceral way as men have made this mistake on regular occasion, which is, or no, not even entirely, just because you were, drunk and made the wrong choice. Sometimes the wind shifts, and you're having a wee, and that stream can, there's horrible things that happen to, your legs, your shoes, when that scenario happens. That's one thing about weeing into a headwind. But what his version of this was, quite often, if you don't drain the tank entirely before a ride, you can have the sensation that you need to go for a wee quite early. And he stopped, did his piece, and then had to chase into a headwind to get back onto the bunch. And I'm amazed that he even got there. Unfortunately, of course, that means that you burn a lot of matches in the process, and it does shag your legs out a little bit for later on. So congratulations to Kieran for actually getting back on in the first place and bringing us that tip for the week. A method I have employed in the past, which was completely unsuccessful, was to announce to the front riders on the bunch to say, I need a wee. And then sort of say, so I'm going to sprint off the front, don't chase me down, I'm just going for a wee. So you do this move where you sprint off the front for a few minutes, stop, they go past, and then the idea is you'll be able to get on easier. That failed miserably in my case, and I couldn't get back on at all, and then time trial by myself for the next hour and a half. Maybe the takeaway from all this is just drain the tank before you start the race and you won't have any of these problems. Those are my thoughts on weeing into a headwind. And lastly, the event for the weekend, which is the North City Shopping Centre Good Friday Criterium. So this Friday, March the 30th, North City Shopping Plaza, that's the one, that's the mall in it's in Parua, is shut, and John Sifter Randall has arranged for the car park to be used as a Criterium circuit. I don't exactly know how this is going to work, what version of indoor-outdoor proportions there will be, or anything else about it, apart from the fact it's on at 10 a.m. on Friday, and it could be a fun little spectator thing. The proceeds going to... Where are the proceeds going? Going to the Mental Health Foundation of New Zealand. I will be coming along to this to support. It's probably more of a fun event than anything else. One thing I would say, two things about crits, and this crit in particular. Crits very much about positioning often, so unless you ride crits like I do, which is as a time trial basically, and hope for the best, my version of riding a crit is right off the front, hope people don't chase you, and time trial. That's not that's not really a traditional form of crit riding. A traditional form of crit riding is a small, fast bunch of you sprinting out of the corners until you vomit and the bunch flies to pieces. And in that case, you need to make sure you're positioned really well. So positioning is king in the crit. You don't want to be so far back that the elastic band breaks. The second thing is particularly about this one, which is, it's in a car park. And it's in a car park in Porirua where, let's be honest, there is probably a giant proportion of cars that are not got the best maintenance standards, leaking oil all over the shop, transmission fluid, all those sorts of things. And obviously, in a slick corner in a car park could be some collarbone snappage. So my hearty suggestion is to treat this event in the manner in which it is intended, and let's not have any carnage on the slippery bits. Would be my notion about this. All right, guys, I will leave it there. If you would like a training plan from me, you can email me, steve@fitlab.co.nz, or you can go to fitlab.co.nz. As always, it's brought to you by FitLab, Tailwind Nutrition, Biomaxa, and Capital Cycles. I see you, not on the weekend, I'll see you on Friday, on the long weekend. See you then.